Hey everybody, Eric Dorward here with the Spartan Rocketry Club and continuing our build of the Estes DARC 1 after a bit of unexpected interruption. So yeah, based on the aftermath of me trying to cut this part out right here, I've decided that I really don't want to be cutting this huge chunk of plastic off with an X-Acto knife, with hobby knife. So we're going to switch over to a circular cutting tool here, at least for some of it, not all of it, because this segment also needs to be removed, and this rounded cut is not something that this can handle. But it can take this back chunk off. And by the way, for a variety of reasons, one being safety that I probably should have been doing in the first place, my non-cutting hand here is protected by a glove. These are cut-resistant gloves you can certainly find on the internet for dirt cheap. I think this pair cost like $10. It's fabric wrapped around steel, so it doesn't make your hand indestructible. Truthfully, it's probably not going to protect against this terribly much, but that really shouldn't be an issue. This is definitely a hobby knife thing to avoid mishaps, let's say. So a good thing to have. Also, like, you don't need to see my Frankenstein thumb. It's not quite healed yet. Anyway, also, speaking of safety precautions, anytime I use a routing tool like this, definitely eye protection. Just, it's a good idea. This thing can kick stuff out. Now, I'm not going to be running it at high speed, probably, but still, better safe than sorry. Before we get to that, however, I did end up getting the two fin slots cut out. They are fine. They probably will need a little further attention down the road. But what they really need right now is a quick sand on that cut, because it's not particularly smooth, especially back here at this end. And you can definitely use a hobby knife to get rid of any, like, if you have a bump there or something, you can trim that off, but just do be careful. This is going to definitely do the job as well. This might take a little bit longer. All right, so that's pretty smooth. Now, this front hole needs to be big enough for two things. One, it needs to be big enough to have the decorative landing gear in it. And it also, although more importantly, needs to be able to have the launch lug slide through it. And it's pretty tight. I don't know if it's going to be quite good enough at this point. I might need to take a little bit more off the edges here, because I don't know if it's flat. But this is the same thing we may have to do with the fin slots once we have the fins ready to go, to see that they fit. So I'm going to say this is probably good enough for now. But again, it does need a quick little sand to get rid of any burrs or whatever on the outside there. And this is not a perfectly symmetrical cut. I can see, partially because the plastic chipped off there when the incident happened, but it looks reasonably good. Also, you can see why I had such trouble with this. The back part here is extremely thin. The front part here is like a solid 1/8 of an inch of plastic, so no wonder it took just about forever to cut through. And certain people got a bit impatient. All right. So, all that being said, it's time to cut. I'm donning my eye protection now. Naturally, I need to plug in the tool. And again, I am going to keep it on low, I think, for this. I don't need to do this quickly. And the tool is generally pretty good at cutting through plastic, even on low speed. So again, I'm going to eventually get to this, but for the time being, I'm going to cut the back off. and so on and so forth. By the way, I'll stop for a second. Whoops, wrong way. I am not looking for a perfect cut here. I'm looking to just chop the back off, and then I can trim it up by kind of shaving off plastic with the hobby knife. So back to business here. Incidentally, a little bit just hit me square in the goggles, so glad I'm wearing the goggles. I'm also erring on the side of caution and not cutting exactly where I want the final cut to be. Because again, I can trim excess off. I can't add parts that I removed accidentally back. I'm back to where I started. But my first pass didn't cut completely through, which is fine. Okay, I'm going to stop for a moment and take a quick assessment of what I've done here. So all these things, they are sharp, so be careful with them. You can see there's a fairly large segment that I haven't cut through right in here, but otherwise, and it's like a bit back here as well. Do be careful with this. All the more reason for wearing a glove. It's not perfectly going to protect you against sharpness, because that's not exactly its intention, but it'll help. All right, I think I'm going to use my knife again now and look at cutting through the spots that are not completely cut. Well, that, I'm going to use a tool on that. And probably in there as well. So there's a fairly lengthy bit here and a little bit there that's not quite cut through. So let's see if we can't finish this up. Okay. And then this part. This part right here is very thick plastic because of the molding. So, unsurprisingly, it's taking quite a few passes to go through it. And that's fine. All right. Let's do another quick assessment. Okay, there we go. And yeah, this part right where the protrusion is, that was really, really thick. There are a few connections I can see that are fairly weak. I can cut through with the knife. Okay, there we go. And off goes the back. Now, notice, this is incredibly ragged. This looks, if this were my finished product, it would be awful. Just awful. So there's going to be, you're going to need to do some sanding work to get this good enough for flight. That is the downside of using a tool like this. You're not going to end up with as clean a cut. And given how much cutting there was there and how thick that one section is, honestly, it's kind of, I would be crazy to try to cut through this by hand. Now, I still need to cut this section out. And I'm going to at least do the straight part with the tool since I have it. But I am not going to attempt to do the curved part because this doesn't do curves. It's just not in its repertoire. So let's give that a go. And this is work I want to be careful with. So that's about as good as that's going to get. Now for the other side. Okay, that's probably as good as that's going to get. So tool, by the way, quite hot blade-wise, so yeah, don't touch that for a while. Let's see if I can knock some of this crap off. Now, unfortunately, a lot of this excess is stuck to the nice part that we want to keep. So, we're going to have to get rid of that. Again, I'm doing this with a bare hand. You probably shouldn't be, because it could potentially be pretty sharp. So maybe glove hand, or maybe just grab a piece of sandpaper and knock it off that way. As for the rest of this, I'm going to have to cut it with the knife. And this is going to take a while. So this is going to be something that I'm not going to bother doing on camera. And this is, again, the plastic here is fairly thick compared to, say, like where I made these cuts where it went quickly. So this is going to take a while. And again, physician heal thyself, this is something that I need to be patient with. So I'm not going to bother doing this on camera right now. It's not worth watching. It's going to take a while. Anyway, that's probably it for this particular segment. One last thing that's worth mentioning before I go is once the cuts are made, I need to sand this. And so this is my ultra high grit sandpaper that I use for the fins. I'm not going to be using that to deal with this plastic stuff because it's not really what I need. What I really need is, well, this stuff is still listed as fine, but it is significantly less fine than the stuff that I normally use. This stuff is grit 320. This stuff that I'm going to use is 150, and that's kind of pushing the boundary into the medium area. And it is really just to get the crap, the bumpy stuff off this. I am also going to break out the hobby knife and trim off where where my cuts were inconsistent and far away from the edge of where I want the plastic to be. That first, then sand. So that's going to happen off camera. You don't need to watch that. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next installment.